Oh my
I'm
God. Okay.
recording because this is just comedy gold.
It looks like I stuck my finger in a light socket. Okay.
Hey, welcome to Inquiring Minds. I'm your host, Steve Harper. With me, as always, is my amazing co host, Donna Carlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm really good and looking forward to today. How about you?
I am as well. These are my highlights of my week. I love these conversations. I love the topics that we put on the table to have these conversations, and how many inquiring minds we are adding to our tribe. I have had so much response over the last several months of people that are like, "You guys really got me thinking," and we're excited about today's topic to do just that. So, what are we covering today?
Okay. I hope I could get this out without it being too
It's
much of
the
a
tongue
tongue
twister
twister.
episode, right?
Yes, it is a tongue twister episode. So taking risks, taking no risks, sorry, will end up being your biggest risk of all. Having to risk to fail helps you succeed.
Oh,
So, yeah. And I know that we live in a risk adverse society these days, and that's really come to the fore with COVID. How
sure.
people tend not to risk, or they go the opposite route and they just risk everything, but we won't
Yeah.
go there. It's not a conversation about COVID. It's about a conversation about us holding ourselves back because we're afraid to risk. And you have to risk to succeed, because if you don't take risks, you'll never know what's possible.
Yep. Yep. Well, so, I'm curious, have you seen in the clients that you work with or the environments that you've been paying attention to, has this, increased significantly since COVID, or has it always been a persistent challenge for business leaders, entrepreneurs, et cetera, to really embrace this concept of risk?
I think a lot of it has to do with their personality and what they're willing to undertake. If I'm working with entrepreneurs and people starting their own businesses, they have to risk, or there's no way they're going to succeed. Especially those embarking on projects that are very different, and they have to go to the world and say, "I'm doing X." And
Yeah,
people look at them like they're nuts to start off with. So, they need to take risks in order to do that. There's so many different categories of this. There's the CEOs and leaders of companies that are publicly traded companies,
sure.
who tend not to risk so much because they have to answer to their shareholders, their boards, and everything else.
Yep.
Those who I really see thrive are the ones that make a case for making and taking risks to their shareholders and to their boards, to say, we don't risk, we don't grow. We don't grow, we start stagnating, and then it goes the other way.
Sure.
I don't think, I think it depends on the personality of the leadership, and whether or not they're willing to stand for what they believe in enough to take that kind of risk. What do
Yeah.
you see?
Well, there's that old adage, right? No risk, no reward. And, I do see that, the companies that I follow with great interest are ones that are, there's risk in every bit of innovation and creativity, right? And there is a propensity, I think, for a lot of organizations to sort of rest on their laurels. We've built something great. Let's kind of ride this wave as far as we can take it, and then when they start to see that peak, they're coming off that peak and starting to go down a little bit. They are, that's when everybody gets into this. Oh my gosh, we got to get going on something new, right? But I think it's interesting that you look at these CEOs and you see the ones that are constantly there. Uh, you've mentioned it before, but kind of professional pot stirrers, right? They're learning and experiencing these things probably because you're challenging them to do so, and with that, they're constantly on a sort of a kick to keep pushing those boundaries and keep creating those environments where they're taking the perpetual risks, whether it is reporting back to a board or they're just trying to innovate their business model and come up with the next new great feature or service. I think it's really important for our listeners to really understand that if you're not taking those risks, you're probably stuck and stagnant in a lot of ways. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go recreate your business model or do something, completely different all the time. But their business is a risk just by showing up, right? It's a contact sport, there's avenues that I think are really interesting to explore from both a large organization perspective and also just that startup, maybe one, two, three person company perspective.
There's another piece to that, and that is the assumptions people make that if they do this, then this is going to happen
Yeah,
with no data to back that up. So it's fear based leadership, I
sure.
use in quotes, because it's not leading at all. It's fear based decision making, the what ifs. I like to turn it around and turn it on its head and go, well, what if you did do it? They
Yep.
go, well, if we do this, this is going to happen. The ceiling's going to fall in, the whole business. And I turn around and go, well, what if it did happen? What would that look like? What would occur if you were able to let go of this and move towards this? It's also the shifting away from scarcity and the fear-based decision making to abundance. What does abundance look like? What does growth look like? And to help them shift their mindset, because they are not going to take risks if they're making decisions based on assumptions that they're not even aware that they're making. How's that?
Yeah, or with the cloud of fear hanging over them, and you're getting them to embrace, okay, well, what if that does come to fruition? What if that, negative story you're telling yourself, those results actually do occur? What could you have learned throughout that process? What experience will you have gone through so that you say, well, okay, that didn't work. All right. But it doesn't mean we just stop and don't go forward. It just means we've found one way that we can't get the door open. We've got to find another way, in, maybe it's a learning experience, and yes, you're risking time, you're risking probably a lot of cost and effort, but you're probably coming to the next set of solutions. You're arriving at those next set of solutions for actually succeeding probably quicker because now you're more attuned to what didn't work and more focused on, okay, what do we need to do to make it work? And I do see, the thing I find interesting is that you get these organizations that sort of get stuck in that neutral position. And we recently had an article about, or an article, excuse me, an episode where we talked about you know um, putting the key in the ignition and utilizing GPS to go to our destination, or programming our GPS to go to the destination, but we never hit it in reverse to go. Right, we just stay stuck. And I think a lot of organizations do that and do it to a point where it often becomes almost too late because they are so desperate to innovate because they've run the full gamut of the cycle. I think of companies like Apple that are continually iterating and adjusting on their products, and they're making efforts to bring new capabilities to let's just use the iPhone as an example. Largely, rather than looking at the chassis, the size, the body of the phone, the body, that aspect hasn't changed all that much, but the functionality, the capabilities,
Yeah.
the enhancements of the cameras, all of these things, they could have just sat there and said, hey, look, let's just use the iPhone 1 and run that out for 5 years or 10 years, and then we'll worry about but they were continually iterating, and by the time they launched the first version, they were already working on version 4 and 5. They knew down the road what they were going to be doing. There's a common risk associated with that, but look at what that's done by way of their growth and the success they've received because of it.
Well, you could say that really, but most phone
Yeah.
companies, Samsung is the same. The Google Pixel is the
Yep.
same. I don't want anybody to think that we are advocates for Apple products, because we're really not. We're looking at the concepts.
Yeah, exactly.
The what if conversations that I have with leaders are generative. It's not like what if you fail. It's what if you were able to do it? What does that look like? And let's
Sure.
build it. Let's look at what if you were able to succeed in this. What is the overall impact, the ripple effect, speaking to Mr.
Hmm.
Ripple, like all of those things that come with that growth and the innovation.
Yeah.
That is so energizing. It's unbelievable. I think also one of the issues that organizations have is when they get groups together to figure out strategy and all those buzzwords,
Sure.
they look at what isn't working. Historically, we did rather than look at what they want for the future and reverse engineer it. There is so much negative energy with all the failures and everything else that they list with, the reasons why they shouldn't try something or they shouldn't go there. Instead, they literally drag all the garbage from the past into the conversation rather than generate something that's energizing. That, what if we did that? What would that mean to the stakeholders, to the world, to our business, all of that? And to really percolate on ways forward is huge. First, they need to get out of their own way. First, they need
Hmm.
to let go of assumptions and that scarcity, feeling that if we screw up or we fail, it's going to cost us a lot of money, investor trust, all of that kind of thing. I don't know about you, but I would rather trust an organization that looks long and hard at what they're
Yeah.
doing and not rest on their laurels and past history, that are always looking to push the envelope because they're trying and they're always looking at improving.
Yeah.
That to me shows that they care enough about what they're doing to innovate.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would rather be doing business in taking advantage of products and services by companies that are doing that because they are, inevitably taking those risks to make whatever it is that they offer today so much better in the future. And that piece I
Exactly.
really love. I think for our listeners and our audience, those of you that are tuning in, whether it be on Facebook or YouTube for this video, to see the beautiful face of Donna every week, or you're catching us on the podcast platforms, the question I would ask you to think about is, what am I not risking, and what should I be risking? And what, start asking yourself those questions, and get those on a list. And then, like Donna mentioned, what is really holding you back? What is at risk, and why is, though, what are you attaching to by way of emotion, or how is your team, what are their attitude towards this effort? And really, shine a light on that, as opposed to being fearful of it, and start to bring some of those things onto the table for discussion, because everybody should have a voice around your conference table, and give a perspective. But at the end of the day, as a strong business leader, you have to, you're sort of paid to take those gambles. And whether you are answering to a board or to your shareholders, or you're an entrepreneur and you're just trying to run the business and grow it, where you are today is not where you should be tomorrow. And ultimately, I think that's going to require you get pretty comfortable being uncomfortable with taking some risks.
That's it. One of the things that I do with people, I might have mentioned this before, is I start on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you towards where you want to be? And if they say, I'm a 5, for example, and they're stuck there, the first question is, what are you currently doing so you're not a 4 or lower? So they
Hmm.
start listing of everything that they did to get them to where they are now. Okay, so what do you need to do to be a 6? And they'll
Yeah.
incrementally keep growing something. I think often a framework or a model that I work with them on gives them that stability and that sense of safety,
Yeah.
because it's
Absolutely.
not like from 5 to 10. They're looking 5 to 6 or maybe 5 to 7. It's a slower growth and it's more manageable in their minds, if not anything else. And it helps them continue to grow, and they continue to ask themselves those questions. So again, what is the question you need to ask yourself? What do you need to let go of is top of my list in
Yep.
order to get, beyond that.
Well, and you do a lot of work in this area, and as we wrap up this episode, it's a perfect opportunity for you to share how people can get in touch with you, because this is your, this is your wheelhouse. This is what you love. This is where you love playing, and I do to a certain degree, but you are the legitimate expert here on helping those top level teams and executives really look forward and embrace the risk factors that they have in their environments. So how would people get in contact with you, and ultimately maybe just even briefly explain how they might engage you to start a conversation about working with you?
The easiest way is through my website, donnacarlin.com, with a K, not a C. Just wanted to throw that in. And yeah, and Steve could be found at ripplecentral.com. You could get us through our Facebook page, Inquiring Minds. with Donna Carlin and Steve Harper. That's also a great place for you to tell us, what do you want us to talk about?
Yeah.
Tell us what, these sessions have meant to you and how you view some of our ideas. We would love that. And you could get all our social media through our websites. They're up there, for you to follow us or engage with us in multiple conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I might throw out there is that Donna and I'd be willing to just get on an exploratory call with you just to have that conversation. If you are sitting out there and saying, "Well, look, I am facing this decision on a risk that I'm looking to take for my business, my career, or putting forward for my team," just a kind of a sample size, if you will, of an opportunity to get a feel for how Donna and I might approach helping you get and navigate through those waters, we'd certainly throw that out there. So we definitely appreciate everybody that has joined us today. This is a great conversation. I love it. I love these topics, and they're so useful because you can take them forward and put them in front of the people that are important to you to have these conversations, whether it be your immediate colleagues, your leadership team, your organization as a whole, because this will inevitably allow you to take this topic of risk and start to have your own conversations about it. And we'd love to hear how those go. So definitely check out our different environments. We respond to comments on our Facebook page. We respond to comments on YouTube as well. So if you happen to be there, if you're listening through the podcast platforms, not a lot of easy ways for you to comment there, but we'd encourage you to join us on the Facebook group so that you can be a part of our community. So Donna, thank you so much for another enchanting and amazing conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back again very, very soon.
Have a good one.